Let me tell you a story. It's a love story. It's a love story between someone who has passed away and someone who is still alive. While this may sound a little bit odd to speak about a love story between someone who is alive and someone who is no longer breathing, I suspect that this is how many people feel who carry love in their hearts for a person who has died. The love story I'm going to tell you is the story between Michael and his wife, Gloria. Gloria died a couple of years ago after they were married for more than 50 years. Our conversation began with a simple question when I asked Michael, "Could you tell me your wife's name and a bit about her?" Michael had no trouble sharing touching memories, nor did he find it hard to recount the stories that made him laugh and the moments that brought tears to his eyes. The years of their marriage were the basis for a rich relationship, and he was eager to introduce his wife to me, posthumously. As he and I spoke, I asked him to tell me what he loved about his wife. He shared with me how his wife was a music teacher who inspired her students. He told of Gloria's love for her family and how she adored their 9 grandchildren. He valued their shared volunteer work for socially just causes. Michael's eyes lit up as he spoke about Gloria's passion for nature and how he loved to place flowers next to her bed when she could no longer go outside. He admired her strength and how she used music to curb the pain of a debilitating illness that ultimately led to her death. As Michael told me more details of this graceful and beautiful woman, his love for her, and how much he adored her, it was as if Gloria entered the room, pulled up a chair, and sat listening to her stories being told. Like Michael, when a person we love dies, we do not stop thinking about them. We do not stop caring for them, and we do not stop wanting to recall the best of the times between us. Unfortunately, these cherished memories have often been buried alongside our loved ones, relegated to a place dictated by past tense descriptions of a relationship gone by. Let me explain. For the last 100 years, the intersections of psychology and medicine have created a particular model of grief psychology that has insisted on a one-size-fits-all practice that can sever precious memories. These practices have been prescribed in medical offices and in many counseling conversations, often advising bereaved people that they should accept that their loved one is gone and that their grief will wind its way through a series of stages or tasks. This model is one that we are familiar with, even if we have never ever read a psychology book or taken a psychology class. It is a model that is built in descriptions that most often include the 5 stages of grief, that prescribes the letting go, the saying goodbye, and finding closure to a relationship. We hear it everywhere. On television shows, we read it in greeting cards, and even from well-intended people who surround us. Up until very recently, these practices have dominated how people have come to believe what is the correct way to grieve. For example, bereaved people are encouraged to write letters of farewell to their deceased loved ones, or they are encouraged to perform rituals of letting go. It is not unusual to see these practices at memorial services, like we might see the releasing of balloons or the releasing of butterflies, or even advice is given in hopes to resolve unfinished business between the living and the dead. Bereaved people might even be told when the right time is to give away items that are connected to their loved ones. Now, for some, this may be useful to find that sense of closure or completion, but for many, these practices have sequestered and silenced the love for our deceased to support a belief that the dead should rest in peace. These leading practices of grief psychology have removed the context of relationship and can overlook the way in which a person has died. Conventional grief psychology can perhaps even accentuate our heart's yearning for a connection to those who are no longer breathing, and it forces the dead to live on as if they are a ghost without shape or form. Moving on and forgetting, to me, seems like a cruel way to treat a person or even an animal who we love that has passed away. But what if there were another way? What if rather than saying goodbye when a person dies and disconnecting from their relationship, we were to think about what remains? What if rather than letting go, we focus on what continues to be vital? Obviously, the relationship will change. The relationship changes when a person dies, and this requires a different way of us connecting to them. But the desire to tell the stories, to hold the love that we shared, is an affirming opportunity to enliven these relationships. I believe remembering practices are the future of grief psychology. Affirming the best of relationships between the living and those who are no longer breathing crafts a new way forward where the deepest pain of grief can ease. Using memories and love to fashion a relationship between people like Michael and Gloria grows hope, where the relationship can act like a beacon of light, guiding us in what can be some of the darkest days of life. To step into the future of grief psychology, Michael and Gloria teach us that we must maintain connection. Now, this enlists a whole different set of grief assumptions that differ from grief psychology. The first thing that we can learn when we look at the story between Michael and Gloria is that love does not die when a person dies. Love does not die when a person dies. The love that we shared becomes a resource for the living that can be tapped into as if it is a guide to fill a healing place for our hearts and as a source of inspiration to find meaning or renewed purpose. When we follow Michael and Gloria's story, we also learn that people do not want to be forgotten, and the bereaved do not want to forget those who have died. I believe that remembering practices re-centers the love for those who are no longer breathing and affirms that they still matter to us. Remembering practices provides the thinking and the tools that shifts grief psychology towards love and towards relationship. Remembering practices has the potential to alleviate the deepest pain of longing, the kind of pain that can steal our breath and can bring us to our knees. Remembering the best of the past to shape a way forward can provide healing for the wounds that grief can bring. Remembering those who have died means that we can actively conjure their stories to mind. We can speak about the cherished memories. We can introduce the stories of them to people who did not know them. Remembering is not a passive process, but one where we continue to feel our love for people who have been significant to us, and we can even imagine their love for us. Remembering those who have passed away allows us to actively include them in our lives. Through this inclusion, we can form new meaning and new purpose while we continue to carry our shared memories to shape us into a new experience. Practicing remembering looks like Michael introducing me to his wife, Gloria. Remembering practices also looks like the mother who speaks to her son every morning as she is preparing for her day, even though he has been dead for more than a decade. Remembering is also the wife who finds comfort in wearing her husband's bathrobe to sleep in. She imagines his arms around her, hugging her tight, and this brings her comfort. These practices create loving memories, bringing a sense of the person who is no longer alive closer to us. Michael and Gloria also teach us there is no time limit as to when we have to stop saying a loved one's name out loud. And there is no time limit when stories have to stop being told. This includes that we are not required to let go of meaningful items or cut the bonds between the living and those who are no longer breathing. We can invite loved ones who are no longer with us physically to travel with us. They can travel with us to the grocery store, to workplaces, to celebrations we share, and to places of worship. Michael and Gloria teach us so much They further teach us that remembering can both be a private act or ritual to connect with our deceased loved ones, but they can also be very public moments. Remembering practices are the sharing of stories around a holiday meal, of years gone by, or perhaps it's the acknowledging of a deceased person's pride in the new graduate. Public acts of remembering looks like the time when the actor Jamie Foxx spoke during his Oscar acceptance speech that he could not wait to go to sleep that night and have a conversation in his dreams with his deceased grandmother about his accomplishment. We all have grandmothers or others who have passed away in very public spaces to consult and to feel their pride in our accomplishments. When a relationship was loving, we want to celebrate this for the years to come. For Michael, this meant he could introduce his wife to me and what was shared between them, and that invoked her presence. Remembering weaves a future tapestry for Michael, where Gloria's imagined presence has a hand in creating the appearance of this tapestry's texture and its hues. If Michael were only to be guided to adjust to being alone, or how to say goodbye to the love of his life, this tapestry remains colorless, and everyone loses. Their children, their 9 grandchildren, and for all those who have yet to be introduced to Gloria, and to hear of Michael's beautiful love for her. Instead, when we practice the remembering, it is highlighted in such a way that their love is entwined in what continues to give daily meaning to him. Michael speaks to her in his favorite reading chair, where there's a lovely picture of Gloria next to him. He tells me it's a comfort to have her nearby, as he points to the picture. He consults her opinion on important matters. He tells me that this is mostly on all matters, but mostly involving those of his children and their grandchildren. He explains that he likes to keep her updated, knowing that this would be important to Gloria. Remembering practices brings her imagined voice, one that Michael would no doubt be very familiar with after more than a half-century of marriage, to life. It is her voice, along with his, that creates this beautiful tapestry, woven with colors and threads that are new. Michael and Gloria's stories, as told by him, as well as their children and their grandchildren, can add to this beautiful, vibrant tapestry. Remembering practices can inform grief psychology and counseling conversations where relationships are centered to uphold the best of our loving humanity. Remembering can ease the suffering of parents whose newborn has died, or soothe the shattered lives after someone we love dies by their own hand. Remembering practices can also help those who have experienced painful disconnection with the person who has died, or was caused harm and suffered abuses in the relationship. We do this by carefully restoring a sense of agency to the person who is grieving. These practices allow the bereaved to figuratively find their footing on days when this seems almost impossible. Remembering practices are not a model of grief psychology that is predicated by stages, but one that is guided by stories of love, of strength, and of connection. Michael spoke to me about the day that he brought his wife's ashes home. He told me how he felt protective of her on that day, protective of her just like when she was alive. He explained to me that when he picked her ashes up, he wasn't sure where he was going to put them. He said when he got home, he had an imagined conversation with her where he consulted her about where to put them and decided to put them on the hearth right next to where she sat and would read. He said that he imagined her presence encouraging him to do this. And he said that this was a very peaceful thing to have her ashes nearby. As someone who believes in the practice of remembering and the telling of the love stories, I know that Gloria would approve of being consulted in this way. of having the memory of her voice and their shared love invoked. She would like that this brings comfort to Michael. We all deserve this kind of love, to be cared for tenderly. And after we die, we deserve to be cared for tenderly by those who are connected to us while we are alive. To do anything less, to not practice remembering, to me, seems like such a waste to a love story. Thank you.